Hello, everyone. My name is Audra Breidendorf, and I am the Community Engagement Specialist for Inspiritus Nashville office. Thank you for participating in this volunteer orientation. Glad to have you here. And we will just jump right in and get started. So, how to support refugees here in Nashville. First, we're going to kind of go over who Inspiritus is. For those of you who may not know or are just getting started. So Inspiritus was previously two different organizations. It was, well, the same organization in two locations. Lutheran Services of Georgia and Lutheran Services of Tennessee combined to become Inspiritus and serve more of like the Southeast region rather than just those two individual states. And so now they are serving in many capacities across Alabama, Tennessee, and Georgia, as well as entering into neighboring states depending on different situations that might arise. And the mission of Inspiritus across their many different areas is the same, and that is to help people walk from surviving to thriving. This orientation is specifically for our refugee and immigrant services, but there are other parts that we'll talk about in just a moment, areas where Inspiritus serves many, many people. And so we want to, our mission is we want to help these people move from surviving to thriving, empowering people that have had their lives disrupted in many different ways, to discover their strengths and to discover their resilience, and just accompany them as they grow into vibrant contributors of their community. And so we do that in a few different ways. It's starting with meeting basic needs, helping with the feeling of stability and safety, integrating people back into community, with the ultimate goal of being self-sufficient and no longer needing assistance from us or any other organization. So some of those other areas that we serve in besides the refugee and immigrant services include children and family services, disability services, and disaster response. There are many great things, like I said, happening in all of these different areas. Even here in Nashville as well, we have another office that does many of these things. If you are interested to learn more, you can reach out and we can discuss that later. So as I mentioned before, we primarily are located in Georgia, Tennessee, and Alabama, though we do have projects and things that arise, particularly in that disaster relief category, in some neighboring states. And so we can reach a lot of people through the services that we provide. Where we resettle refugees are the offices in Atlanta, Birmingham, Savannah, and Nashville. And our Nashville office is actually the newest office for this. We resettled our first refugees in May of 2022, so just shy of 4 years ago now, as I'm recording this. For anyone who's new to the resettlement process, we're going to kind of walk through a little bit of what that looks like. And so here's kind of the hierarchy system for that. The United States government does resettle refugees, and they work through 10 different organizations across the country, one of those being the Lutheran Immigrant and Refugee Services, LIRS. You might hear us refer to them a few different times as you work with us in the future. And so we receive funding and receive clients through LIRS and resettle them as Inspiritus across the offices and that I mentioned before. Our Nashville office, as I said, is the newest office, and we have grown significantly even just in the last few months. So we now have a youth program that has just gotten started as the beginning of 2026. Luis Pedraza is the one coordinating that, and Ahmad and Rachel are working with him on that team. Casey Vargas is a case management coordinator, so she's working with our social adjustment cases and our intensive case management cases. And she has a few different caseworkers with her, which are Gisele, Erica, and Tony. We have Sikendi Seka, who is our economic empowerment manager. And so he oversees Kevin and Hytham, and they are our economic empowerment coaches, and that team is helping clients find employment, find meaningful employment, and doing some job training and coaching. Another brand new program that we have is the Refugee Health Program, and Maria Cisse is the one coordinating that, and Maggie is working with her as our outreach specialist for that program. This is a great program that, like I said, is just getting started with a focus of doing group sessions with clients, the hope of meeting some of the mental health needs that many of our clients face. Mental health is not in the name of the program, as there are many stigmas that kind of follow that, particularly among different cultures, but that is the hope, is to address some of those needs that many of our clients have. Down here at the bottom, these middle two sections, you'll see kind of our legal department. So Mackenzie is an immigration legal assistant here in Nashville. We have someone who is DOJ accredited to oversee our legal cases in Atlanta, and so Mackenzie works with her. And then we just recently added Salma to the team, who is going to help with that intake process. So as you might imagine, right now there are a lot of cases for our legal team, and so we're trying to help organize that by having Salma here to help with that process. Jessica Twentyman is the manager of our office, so she has her hands in all sorts of things, does a great job of taking care of the team, getting things done, and also engaging with clients. She's been around in the Nashville office for a little while now, and then I am the community engagement specialist. So my job is to find folks like yourself, volunteers who want to get involved with our programs or who have ideas to even improve things that we have going on. So now we're going to jump a little bit into the refugee process, and we'll start that conversation by talking about who is a refugee. So a refugee is someone who has a well-founded fear of persecution for reasons of race, religion, nationality, political opinion, membership in a particular social group, and has had to flee their country. We'll get into a little bit more of this later, but this is the historical definition of a refugee when this program was started in 1980 by President Jimmy Carter. Recent changes have changed some of this, but we'll get into that in a moment. So this is who a refugee is. And so people are fleeing because of war, they're fleeing because of trafficking, violence and torture. It could be many, many different things that lead them here or lead them to flee their home and possibly end up here. Here are a few facts. So these are as of the end of some as of the end of 2024 and some into 2025. These are the most recent facts that I could find. So by the end of June 2025, more than 117 million individuals have been forcibly displaced worldwide as a result of persecution, conflict, violence, or human rights violations. We are witnessing the highest levels of displacement on record at the moment, which is pretty baffling. At the end of 2024, an estimated 49 million, which is about 40% of those refugees or displaced people, are children under the age of 18. And 71% of refugees are hosted in low and middle income countries, which often don't have the infrastructure to support them. Going back to the statistic with children, in 2025, close to half of all the refugee children, so 46%, remain out of school. So again, it was an estimated 49 million that were children. Almost half of those are out of school. And refugees may spend years and even decades living in camps, and it is common to have entire generations growing up in these refugee camps. There are families that I personally have worked with I worked with children in programs, and their parents were born in refugee camps. So that's just the life that they know, because these conflicts are so ongoing and entrenched, and it's such a hard process to get out of the camps. You might hear a few other terms about people who have fled their homeland for various reasons. Some other terms are asylum seekers. So when people flee their own country and seek sanctuary in another country, they apply for asylum, and that is the right to be recognized as a refugee and receive protection and assistance. So those people could be, if you hear of someone as an asylum seeker, they are waiting to be granted that refugee status. Internally displaced people, or IDPs, are people who have not crossed a border to find safety. So unlike refugees, they are on the run, but they are still at home in their own country. So they cannot be in their home, likely not even in their same city, but they are still within their country's borders. Stateless people are people who don't have a nationality and may struggle to access basic human rights because of this. And there are a few different examples of that throughout the world. And then humanitarian parolee is, so humanitarian parole is used to bring someone who is otherwise inadmissible into the United States temporarily due to an emergency. If you have more questions about any of those things, I recommend visiting the unhcr.org website or reaching out to me with any questions that you might have. So as Inspiritus, we do welcome refugees from all around the world. So we have people from Democratic Republic of Congo, from Burma, Vietnam, Syria, Sudan, Iraq, Afghanistan, El Salvador, Honduras, Ukraine, just really the world over. And so we get to see a lot of different wonderful cultures welcomed here in Nashville. So again, this slide will kind of go back to some historical facts about the refugee resettlement process. These were true up until the last year, where some changes have been made. So refugees do not apply for resettlement themselves. The UNHCR identifies vulnerable cases to be considered for resettlement. The UNHCR, for those who do not know, is the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. Resettlement is only for the most vulnerable refugees. So all refugees who are referred to the refugee program must fit at least one vulnerability category. So some of which include medical needs, children at risk, women and girls at risk, or survivors of violence and torture. A country's government decides which refugees to admit for resettlement. So in addition to the UNHCR's screening process, the United States conducts its own vetting process to decide whether to accept a refugee for resettlement. People who have committed serious crimes or who might pose a security threat are not eligible for refugee status or resettlement. And only 1% are ever resettled. So going back to that slide with all those statistics, right now there's 117 million people in the world who have fled their homes. Only 1% of that number will ever find themselves resettled into another country. The hope is that some of them can go back to their countries. That's just never a guarantee because of the volatile situation. So how a refugee gets to Nashville, looking at it a little bit more. So they leave their home country and they register with UNHCR at the refugee camp. The UNHCR refers a refugee to be considered for resettlement in the US and provides background information that includes iris scans, fingerprints, facial scans, and other biodata. Then the US government screens the refugee and decides whether to admit them for resettlement. So this process is very rigorous. It involves 8 different US government agencies. 5 separate security databases are used to track and check these people. There are 6 different background checks run, and then also 3 in-person interviews. This process can take generally 2 years. So a family might flee their country, get referred to the refugee program, get referred to the United States, and then still it would take at least 2 years to go through the vetting process before they might have an answer about being resettled here. If the refugee is approved, the State Department assigns the case to one of the 10 US NGOs, and that's going back to that previous slide where I mentioned the RIS, and that is who oversees Inspiritus. So at that point, they would be assigned to Inspiritus, and we would resettle them by helping them integrate and becoming economically self-sufficient. So going back to, again, the screening process for the government, and mentioning earlier that some people might spend decades in a refugee camp. The average stay right now for a refugee in a camp is 18 years. So there are some people who get in and out a little more quickly, and there are some people who take longer than 18 years. So just kind of have that in mind when we're thinking about the refugee process. So again, kind of these facts I mentioned earlier and this process I mentioned now was the historical process that has been the way it has been since 1980. But as of recent events, some of that has changed. So right now there is an exception to the kind of the process of getting referred. So as of February 7th, 2025, President Trump issued an executive order titled Addressing Egregious Actions of the Republic of South Africa, and that formally established a policy to prioritize the resettlement of Afrikaners. What makes that look different than the previous process is it is expedited vetting. So most of them do not undergo the same vetting process that takes years. So the first Afrikaners were fast-tracked, and so again, this was established on February 7th of 2025, and by May 12th of that same year, the first Afrikaners were being resettled here in the United States. So they have kind of skipped the line that has formed and skipped the vetting process. And the majority of these Afrikaners that have been resettled or are in line to be resettled have actually not fled or crossed an international border, so they are still within their home country. So those are just kind of some differences of things that are happening right now. And as of this fiscal year, the resettlement priority has changed, and so there is a cap of only 7,500 people for the whole year to be resettled here in the United States. And again, with reserving the majority of those slots for people of the Afrikaner community. If you have questions about that as well, just unhcr.org is a great place to go. So we'll jump in a little bit more here. So the program of initial resettlement. So previously, the program was called Reception and Placement, and that was when we received the refugees that were assigned to Nashville, and we would place them in the community. So that resettlement process included finding, getting their first apartment set up and providing, helping with housing, the funding for their first month of rent and getting them their benefits started and set up and getting jobs set up and things like that. That was what our team was doing under RMP. With some of the changes again that have happened in the last year, that program has shifted. It's no longer RMP, but is now Program of Initial Resettlement, so PIR. That changes kind of who oversees it as far as like the government entities. But the ways that it kind of affects us primarily is, again, it's changed who is prioritized coming in and how they arrive by cutting the number in half. And then it also cuts back benefits from 12 months after arrival to now only 4 months. The idea that the administration is putting with that is that just expediting self-sufficiency, which again is always the goal. So even with the 12-month allowance, that was the goal. But now it is, shortened to 4 months, which does make it very, very difficult. So if you can imagine coming here with nothing and then having to, within 4 months, suddenly be able to take care of yourself and your family, it's a very quick turnaround. Another executive order that has happened recently is called Realigning United States Refugee Admissions Program. This kind of comes with some information that changed due to the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. And so prior to this new bill, U.S. citizens and certain lawfully present non-citizens were eligible for SNAP benefits if they met other income and non-financial requirements for the program. So lawfully present non-citizen groups eligible for SNAP included refugees, asylees, victims of trafficking, Amerasians, Cuban and Haitian entrants, and Iraqi and Afghan special immigrant visa holders. However, this new law eliminates text in the Food and Nutrition Act that made refugees eligible for SNAP, thus rendering refugees now ineligible for SNAP upon arrival. So the rewritten text also excludes other immigrant groups from SNAP eligibility, such as asylees, victims of trafficking, and survivors of domestic violence. So that does make a lot of changes for our clients and a lot of hardship. Right now, clients that we have resettled prior to this are legal non-citizens, and so they're like lawfully present non-citizens, so they should still qualify for SNAP. However, with again some other changes as they reapply for green cards and things, there's a hold on reapplying for green cards, which means that they will likely not qualify for SNAP as they're waiting for that process. So slowly over time, our current clients will continue to lose some of these benefits that were guaranteed to them when they were resettled. So due to a lot of these changes, it came to our attention as Inspiritus that we needed to maybe think about what it looked like to resettle people right now. And so we have decided as an organization that for this fiscal year, so fiscal year 2026, that we will not be resettling any new refugees for the time being. Again, the number for the entire country is only 7,500. There are many other agencies that are still resettling. And so if people come and really need it, there is still help available. But the question for us kind of became an ethical one of at what point is it maybe not as okay to bring people over who are no longer eligible for benefits and who are not feeling safe at this time, even when they arrive here. And so there is plenty of work for us to do with our clients who are already here. But yeah, for the next fiscal year, we are not resettling new clients. And that is just something I want to be made clear here. But there, again, still much work to be done with the clients who are here. So some of these changes, there's still work to be done. We still have an economic self-sufficiency goal for all of our clients. So our employment and economic empowerment team is very busy helping clients find jobs. Many clients have been in jobs since they arrived. Now they've gained experience, they're gaining language capacity, they want to pursue different jobs, find better shifts, things like that. So our team is very busy helping with those types of things. We're continuing to help with cultural adjustment, helping clients learn how to make phone calls to their doctor's office and contact the school for their children if someone's going to be sick. And so just kind of walking people through how to do a lot of these things that are very much a part of our American culture that may not be what they're used to back home. And then connecting to other refugees other refugees in the community and also community resources and meeting new neighbors. Just to find a sense of belonging here in their new home. And there are a few different ways to get involved with Inspiritus. There's volunteering, which is why you're watching this orientation. There are always ways to donate, whether it's in-kind items or financially. And then there's a co-sponsorship program, which I think right now looks a little different because of our resettlement stance. But you can inquire if you have questions about that. You can volunteer as an individual or as a small group. So there's different ways, again, that can look. Right now, we're not setting up new apartments for arriving families, but we can still collect items that people might need. So right now, because we're not getting new arrivals, we don't have the same like typical list of those furnishings that we need, but we do have clients that come in who need particular things. So there's always a running list that you can check in with me about to get particular items for clients. People often need help with transportation, maybe to or from appointments, or helping them learn how to use the city bus system. That is a great way to empower self-sufficiency. And introducing clients to Nashville, and that can be like, again, to fun or practical places. So how to use the grocery store and the postal system, things like that. But it could be like going to a sounds game or a museum, and learning more about the culture around them. And then there are definitely ways to mentor clients with English conversation partners, any sort of like financial education or financial literacy, lots of career development, so helping with resumes and interviews. Again, those cultural orientations, and even tutoring clients who are wanting to take citizenship tests or wanting to take driving tests, get their license, students in school, studying for exams and things. Those are all definitely wonderful ways to get involved. Occasionally we have reason for kind of specialized volunteering. So there are events throughout the city that we like to go to. If you want to help table an event and just share who Inspiritus is, we would love help with things like that. Teaching cultural orientation classes, helping families get signed up for home internet, or helping them navigate their phone bill and things like that. If you have any sort of language capacity, if you are willing to provide interpretation or translation services, that would be amazing. Driving clients to and from appointments, mentoring for college or careers, or just any other skills or passions that you have, I do want to know about. So if you are a photographer and you want to take family portraits and as a way to give back to clients, that would be amazing. Or if you are in the music industry and we find that we have a client who's interested in that, or a client who has a special skill, and getting them in front of somewhere to play, on stage or recording something. I don't know. There's lots of ways to get involved, and I would love to think creatively and collaborate with you. So kind of some of those cultural orientation pieces, it's kind of just reminding them the role of resettlement agency, which our case workers do a really good job of this. So, this is who Inspiritus is, this is how we help you, and this is the boundary that we have for that, and the goal that we have, ultimately for you to be able to navigate life on your own here. We can be teaching English, helping with different public assistance things, teaching them about US laws and things about the new community, teach them about the healthcare system or the employment and how it is to apply for jobs and do resumes and cover letters, figuring out budgeting and personal finance, basic housing things, like even like housing, like hygiene is different here than maybe back home. And so going through like these are the different types of cleaning products that we have here, and this is what they're used for. Personal hygiene is also often different, culturally, and so just kind of going over that, talking about safety. So that could be even like how to use car seats and things like that with their children, or bicycle helmets when they're out playing. Talking through other cultural adjustments that might arise, helping navigate the education system, helping navigate public transportation. Those are all ways to help just orient new arrivals or clients to the culture. Going over to where other ways to get involved might be donating. So these are some examples of like in-kind items that we would have taken in the past. Again, I would just reach out to me before bringing some of these items. We don't have great storage at our office, but for a lot of things like this, we probably know someone who might want or need these things. So if we can coordinate to get them directly to clients, that would be great. Every year we do a winter coat drive in like November, December, so that's a great thing. Bikes are a great way to help with transportation to and from jobs, obviously, and yes, if you have any items like that you're willing to donate, that would be amazing. We do try to maintain equity of care across the clients. So if there are large cash or in-kind donations, we just want to make sure that you talk to us first. So sometimes people have vehicles that they are very generous and want to donate that, and that is an amazing thing. It can incur like additional costs and involve some other things. So that is a particular item where we do need to make sure we have a conversation about it first. It's not impossible, and it's not that it's never been done before, but it just requires a conversation. Okay, moving on. So we're just going to talk now a little bit developing cultural competence and sensitivity. So as we mentioned earlier, we are working with clients from a wide range of countries and cultures. And so that just develops, or that just creates the opportunity to develop this kind of sensitivity to those cultures, even as we are teaching and orienting to culture here in the United States. So we want to help explain like US culture to clients. So talking about equality and independence and individualism. So a lot of clients come from cultures that are very communal and group-minded, and it can feel often just kind of harsh and cold even to be in the US because things can be independent and individual. But there's good and bad in all of these things. And so how to find that balance and learning the differences. And then talking about success and hard work and how those are interrelated. Some cultures, people come from cultures that kind of like a shame honor society, and so talking about how that's different here in the United States, and even extreme honesty. So there you might encounter clients who will say very bluntly something, and it doesn't necessarily come across very kind or appropriate. And so just kind of talking about that. And sometimes that's just a language barrier as well. Time and the importance of time and timeliness looks different in other cultures. So just understanding that, helping clients understand that it is better to be on time or early here in the States versus just showing up when you feel like it. Sometimes American culture is a little more self-focused, and there's a big focus on privacy, and that can be different than some of these other cultures. And yeah, just going over like informality and personal hygiene. Again, a lot of things that might be different from their culture, and just explaining what it looks like here in the United States. If you have questions about any of these things, please don't hesitate to ask. We can talk through them. And then I would also recommend, as you are paired up with clients, we will make sure that you know a little bit about their background, and provide you with some resources so you can kind of learn where they're coming from. As a volunteer, it is super important that we set appropriate boundaries. We never want any of you to feel like you are being asked to do too much. We don't want you to experience any sort of burnout or feel obligated to do more than what you have signed up for. Our goal is that you would become friends with these clients and become an advocate for them and helping them, that they would have another point of contact that's not just their caseworker. But with that, don't ever feel the burden of needing to do everything you can all the time to take care of them. Because again, the goal is for them to become self-sufficient. And one day our agencies might not exist, or they might not have the resources. And so the idea is to get them connected into the community where they are able to have people to go to when they need help, but then also able to track things down on their own and do what they need to do to take care of themselves and their families. So it's good to be tolerant of maybe some unrealistic demands, but also firm. So it is okay to say no. Some cultures do negotiate more than we do here in America, so they might start with a really big ask and you say no, and they kind of come back with something else. And so just kind of be aware that negotiation is sometimes just part of the culture. And if that feels like a lot of pressure, we can talk through maybe how to handle those types of conversations. If they ask for any sort of like financial involvement from you, do not do that. Again, the goal is for them to become self-sufficient. They are working with employment coaches in job situations, and so everyone has trouble at some point. It might need a little extra help. All of us do, but we don't want any volunteers to ever give money directly to clients. If a client does ask for something and you do want to help, in that way, we need to go through Inspiritus. And so talk to me and we can figure out what to do with that and how to get that done. It could be that a client that you're paired with is just constantly asking for rides everywhere, and that can definitely lead to a feeling of burnout, or just it can be hard to say no over and over again. Don't feel bad about that. It's good for clients to learn how to use the public transit system, and so just remind them what that is, and even help them learn how to navigate it. So looking up the bus times can be very helpful, or even if you have a day to kind of sit at the bus stop and show them even a direct route, that could be a way to help with that. And then just setting boundaries with rumors. So there are two sides, or more to every story. And so just keep that in mind as people might come to you with information, and be willing to listen and ask questions and clarify before responding or reacting, depending on what the situation might be. Again, we want to avoid any clients becoming dependent or developing some sort of unhealthy reliance on Inspiritus or on you for support. And so that could be in an emotional capacity, financial capacity, with transportation. It could be them with communications, like calling or texting too much, or paternalism. So you're not their parent. You're not adopting them. You're partnering with them, and so don't ever want it to feel like there's some sort of need to take care of them in that capacity. So I'm just going to give this quick situational exercise. I know this is a recording, so we won't get to discuss it, but just something to be think about, like how would you handle a situation like this? So a member of the refugee family you are working with, who is 18 years old, has decided to get a job and work instead of finishing high school. Both of their parents support this decision. 3 other individuals in the family are older and can work, so the family will collectively have enough income to cover their monthly expenses without this individual working. You think that the 18-year-old's family member should finish school instead of work. How would you handle the situation? And so this is not an uncommon or an unheard of situation. Many of these families have multiple family members working, and everyone's contributing to pay for expenses in the home. So things like this can and do come up, and so it's a situation where you kind of weigh your personal opinions and belief system about those things and against kind of cultural norms and expectations. And yeah, I would just suggest having conversation, finding out what you can. Like I personally value education and think that would be very helpful for the client to continue. And so I might try and figure out if there are other reasons they're not wanting to be at school, wanting to work, and just kind of finding solutions to maybe things that they bring up, or finding alternative ideas to meet the same needs. So there are different ways to handle those types of situations. As you might imagine, there's going to probably be language barriers that come up, and so just some things to keep in mind. Be sensitive about who's around, so never use a child to interpret. If the child's in the room and you're talking, and it's simple things like, hi, how are you? Or you're asking, like, how do you say chair? Or how do you say, if you're asking to label things in the room, stuff like that is not like prohibited. But we want to be mindful that children are not being pulled into more elaborate conversations, because that can quickly turn to a parent wanting to talk about financial issues or health issues or things like that the child doesn't need to be a part of. And so just keep that in mind. We do have interpreters. So if you're at a doctor's office with them, or helping call the phone company or things like that, we can figure out how to have an interpreter there with you. If we schedule ahead, there are a few different apps that we recommend that can help with things like that as well. And so there are resources for you if you feel like you need that. Again, just being patient, so giving time for the response. It's okay to repeat things. I would caution that you're mindful of how you're repeating things. It can be sometimes automatic to repeat something slower but louder, and suddenly you're getting too loud, and that's just never going to create a safe feeling environment for the other person. So just be mindful that you're keeping your voice at a conversational level while you're repeating things. Get creative. So try writing things down on paper, using a phone to type it out, using translation apps on your phone as well. Yeah, so we have resources for things like that. Charades is also fun and creates a good laugh if you want to try that again as well. Continuing on, just again, be mindful of communication. So respect that there are separate languages and cultures of these different people you might be working with. So pay attention to like meanings of gestures or things like typical kind of male-female correspondence and interactions or elder-peer etiquette. Again, we can give you some basic information about different cultures depending on who you're paired with, so you're aware of a few of those things beforehand. And then also kind of figure out, be aware of cultural assumptions about things like eye contact or touching others or wearing shoes inside the house or taking shoes off, things like that. Again, back to the speaking clearly and correctly, so you can pause slightly between words, speak in full, simple, short sentences. You can repeat things, try rewording things. It's sometimes going to be kind of a slow process. All of our clients are, wanting to learn English as well. So it's great to use the translation and interpretation opportunities that we have. But it's also good for them to be practicing English. Again, one simple way to help is going over to someone's house just to meet with them, for your once a month check-in, and bringing note cards and labeling items around the house. So writing fridge and a note card and sticking that on the fridge, and door and window, and just things like that can be very helpful and a simple way to interact and to practice. Again, just out of respect for the client and their culture, we want to consider the platinum rule. So you might know the golden rule already, which is to treat others how you want to be treated. So the platinum rule is a little bit different in that it is treat others in the way that they want to be treated. And so that is when you take into consideration maybe their cultural background or life view or life situation, and treating them according to that as well. And so at the same time, there's this delicate balance for us to introduce them to US culture while also respecting where they have come from. And we don't want them to lose their cultures either, because that's what makes them unique and wonderful people. And it's what enriches our lives here. So consider their culture, so value and seek an understanding of their culture. Consider what you're wearing, so sensitivity to cultural differences of newly arrived refugee clients regarding dress. Dress comfortably for the season, but also modestly. In terms of religion, we ask that there's no proselytizing. I know many people often get involved in volunteering because of being compelled by maybe their faith. And that is wonderful, and we welcome that, but there is no, we don't want anyone that you're working with to feel like they're only receiving services because of, wanting to talk to them about religion. So many people are open are to talking about religion and things of faith, but we just ask that you're not proselytizing and trying to change anyone's opinion of faith. And then also with the refugee situation, we ask that you're not asking about their stories. Many people are coming from very traumatic experiences and backgrounds, and we don't want them to have to openly discuss that if they do not want to. No, it could be that they are willing to share and they want you to know. And if it's okay with you, then that is perfectly fine for them to share whatever they want to. That's within your comfort level as well. We just ask that you don't, you know, don't be the one to ask them. Let them bring it up as they feel comfortable. Um, Another thing when working with other cultures is just being adaptable. So you might need to be flexible and adaptable due to language and culture, just kind of slowing things down. It could be that they've asked you for help for something, but then they find, and you're going to their home to help them, and by the time you get there, whenever you've scheduled to be there, they have decided to ask a neighbor, and that's already been taken care of. And so things like that happen. These wonderful people are very resourceful, and so they will find ways to get the help that they need and get things done. And sometimes that means asking you and then doing it before you get there. But that could just open up some time for you to spend some time together. And again, just that orientation for them about time and timeliness. If you say you're going to be there at 3 o'clock, they might think that's a loose time and, be waiting for you and calling you 30 minutes early, wondering where you are, or it could be that they are at the grocery store and don't get back home until, 30 minutes later and you're just waiting for them. So just, again, just helping them understand that the time that we set is the time that we need. And just reiterating that and checking in with them. Some of you might be willing to drive our clients as volunteers, and so whether that's driving clients in your own car or riding in the car with clients in some capacity, we want to make sure that if there are children involved, that they are in the proper seats. And so just a quick view here, rear-facing car seats, again in the back seat, and then there's forward-facing car seats, and then booster seats, and then being in a seatbelt under the age of 13. And so I can send a more detailed video on some of this car seat safety for the state of Tennessee for anyone who might be working with families with children. Again, volunteering with us does not require that you have clients in your car if that is something you are not comfortable with. But there are a lot of opportunities to transport clients. So if it is something you are comfortable with, that could be very helpful, and it might involve children, in which case we can make sure that you have access to the proper seat for the child if for some reason the family does not have that. This is something that I want to spend a little more time on, so confidentiality. It is extremely important that we keep our clients' information confidential. So as a volunteer, when you apply on our Better Impact page, there is a part where you sign that you will keep confidential information confidential, that you will not share anything about the clients you work with anyone else outside of Inspiritus. And so you're not sharing any sort of names, addresses, phone numbers, anything with anyone else, or schedules or workplaces, anything like that you might know. And then as far as things that the family tells you or experiences you have with the family, just making sure that you consider, is this something that you would want shared about your own family before sharing it with someone else? And then is this need to know information for us as Inspiritus? So things to consider about sharing. So I know that as you're working with families, the goal is that you're building a friendship and a relationship with them. And part of that is wanting to make memories and take photos, and that's perfectly fine. We just ask that you do not share those photos on any sort of social media or on the internet anyway. Make sure that consent is always given before taking a photo, and that goes both ways. If you don't want your photo taken from a client or you don't want your photo shared on their personal social media, you can let them know that as well. That does go both ways. And then just when in doubt, if you're, sharing with someone about your experience because you had a great time with this family, just kind of maybe alter names or even countries of origin and just kind of hide identifying details, again, just to keep our clients safe. This has always been a value of ours from the very beginning, but even right now, just kind of in heightened times of security, we want to make sure that our clients are safe in all situations. You will, as a volunteer, likely have access to some sensitive information, particularly if you're helping make appointments or pay bills, things like that. So just keep that in mind, that we don't violate any compliance rules. Again, you're signing something as you sign up for a volunteer. So just keep that in mind. So you might see their documentation with personal information. You might have access to health information or financial information. None of that do we want getting out to anyone who has not gone through our process or who's not involved with that family. So just keep that in mind. With heightened safety and security concerns, we are requiring now that all Inspiritus staff and volunteers and interns wear their Inspiritus badges. So all employees and active volunteers will have a badge, and it will have a photo on it. They'll have a full name photo and your role. When you are, quote unquote, on the clock for Inspiritus, we want to make sure that that badge is visible and on display. Volunteers and interns will have a different color badge than the staff, so that will kind of help. But we want to make sure that our clients feel safe with who is coming to visit them. We want them to know that you have been through the vetting process with us and that you've been approved and that we have you working with us. And so we want them to be able to trust all of our staff and all of our volunteers. So this is just kind of adding that extra layer of security. If as a volunteer you need to stop being involved for whatever reason, that's perfectly fine. We just ask that we receive your badge back so that it's not getting passed around elsewhere or impersonated in any way. If your badge gets lost or stolen, just let us know immediately and we can keep that in mind and also get you a different one. And so, yes, badges are going to be very important moving forward. And again, just kind of going back to why they matter. We want to make sure the clients feel safe. We want to make sure the community knows who we are, what we're doing, and just having that trust and transparency. And then it just looks, more professional as well, particularly for staff or volunteers if we're at events with partners or funders or things like that. Okay, thank you all for hanging in this long. We are getting close to the end here. I'm just going to do a quick overview of some trauma-related practices. So again, many of our clients have been through unspeakable experiences upon arrival here, have been through a lot of things. And so we want to make sure what we do is trauma-informed. So trauma-informed practices refer to a lens of framework or service providers and organizations to use that takes into consideration the client's past trauma when interacting with people. And some of the principles of this trauma-informed care is establishing safety. So we want clients to feel both physically and emotionally safe. Developing trustworthiness and transparency. So we want decisions to be made with transparency and with the goal of building and maintaining trust through task clarity, consistently, and interpersonal boundaries. We want to give clients choice. So many of them did not have a lot of choices in what brought them here. Didn't really choose to leave their home. They were forced, and that was just the beginning of kind of losing choice in their own life. And so we want to maximize their experiences of having choice and control as they're establishing life here. It involves collaboration. So there are power differences kind of between staff and volunteers and clients. And so we want to make sure that we level that down to support shared decision making with clients. We want to collaborate and not just do things for them or make choices for them, but working together to help them become successful or more successful here, and giving them empowerment and voice. So client strengths are recognized, built upon, and validated. This includes a belief in resilience and the ability to heal from trauma. So we want to understand the importance of power differentials and ways in which clients historically have been diminished in voice and choice and are often recipients of coercive treatment. We We want to make sure clients are supported in shared decision-making, choice, or in goal setting to determine the plan of action they need to heal and move forward, and that they are supported in cultivating self-advocacy skills. So staff and volunteers are just facilitators of recovery rather than controllers of that. So we want to just be guides in the process of them finding their footing here in the States. Some tips for working with people who have experienced trauma. So again, avoiding asking questions about traumatic events, such as why they left their home country or how they got here, or even if they still have family abroad. That can be hard. Many of the places they come from are still in active, war zones, and so they might very likely have friends and family at home who are not in safe situations. So that can be hard to talk about. Follow the client's lead and only talk about things if they kind of mention it themselves. And then again, back to confidentiality, keeping their story confidential unless they give you permission to share it with others. Some more tips: be a friend. Like, you are not there to be a social worker or a therapist. Be a friend and provide support and listening, and offer companionship, but also remember to take care of yourself. So if listening to their story is too much, or if it's triggering in any way, like, it's okay to step back. And if you are unsure what that looks like or how to do that, or if you found that you've spent time with a client and later on you realize, oh, that was too much, but you're not sure how to maybe communicate that moving forward, please come talk to me and we can figure out a way to make sure that you're comfortable in that situation. And if you have any sort of like serious concerns about the person you're working with, please contact me. So we do have support that we can provide for clients if you feel like anyone is feeling depressed or suicidal or manic or anything like that. If you notice something that is maybe not where a client is in a healthy situation, just let us know. Even if it's just like an inkling of thinking that, you don't have to provide proof or anything at that point, just like letting us know and we can have someone check in with them. Okay, so some tips for effective collaboration. So utilizing the team approach. So we work as a team on our staff. We have these different departments that working in different areas of the client's life. But we also want to work as a team with, the volunteers, with the staff, with the client. So we're working as kind of a team to help them reach their goals. And then being an advocate for Inspiritus. So clients need to develop trust in the agency so that they can, that our staff can be effective as possible in providing services. And so you're just another way, like another touch point to us as an organization that can help build trust and transparency with clients. And then encourage that they talk to their case manager if they're having any sort of feelings of depression, or if you have concerns or problems, or if they have concerns or problems. Again, all of our clients, we have case managers that are helping with them. And we have people who are trained to check in and people that know their situations better and can provide resources for them. So I don't ever want any of you to feel overwhelmed by those types of things. We are here to work together with you. Some tips for effective collaboration. So sticking to the schedule that you determine with the client, and then being ready to separate from clients when they feel self-sufficient, or when you need to end your time for whatever reason. This can be hard, but it's also healthy for clients. And again, the whole hope is for them to become self-sufficient and integrated into their community. And so that may or may not include you in their immediate community for the long term. And so how can we be ready for that? And then as far as effectively collaborating with us as an organization, we do need to document volunteer hours, mileage, or donations. So I train monthly reports for all of that. And volunteer hours are super important in like future funding, and then requests, same with mileage and donations. And so that's just, it shows our overall effectiveness as an organization and allows us to show funders kind of what we're doing and why it's important and how it works. So it's very helpful for us. You do that on Better Impact. I'll have a page on that later for you to know how to do it. I also want to take a minute to say that it is extremely important for you as a volunteers to practice self-care, and we encourage all of our staff to do that as well. One thing that can help with that is just setting boundaries. So establish those clear boundaries early on and being consistent and following them. And it's, again, important to avoid dependencies. So before being paired with the client or when being paired with a client, you will meet them with their case manager or with myself. And this will be established very clearly from the beginning between all parties involved, kind of what these boundaries are. And then set realistic expectations. So it's important that your team discusses expectations for the partnership. So again, when you're meeting with the client on that first meeting with the client and the case manager, you'll talk about the expectations and yeah, how to handle that. And then we want to prevent burnout. So burnout is becoming so tired and unhappy with the way the partnership is going that one quits the team or views the experience overall with negative feelings. And we don't want that for anyone, for you, for the client, for the organization. And so if you feel that you're in maybe over your head or it's just different than you thought, like please talk to me and we can figure something out, whether that's you stepping back for a time or whether that's bringing in someone to partner with you and so you're doing things as a team together so it doesn't feel like things are just falling on you, or it's just revisiting with the client the kind of the social contract that was set up of like, hey, this was the boundary we agreed to and I feel like it's not being respected. How can we fix that? And we can facilitate those conversations. Again, we value you as a volunteer. We want to make sure that you're enjoying your experience and that it is meaningful for both you and the client. All right, so just quickly, there are some cultural resources that can be used. So I would recommend visiting sites like this or like this. So the Cultural Orientation Resource Center. And there are videos there that kind of show you what a Bhutanese refugee might experience, or what a refugee from Burma might experience, or from Congo, and so you can just learn those situations. Next steps. So if you're watching this video, you have already registered on Better Impact and you have already had a background check. So thank you for watching this orientation. I will send a follow-up link with a short quiz for you to take to make sure you watch the whole thing. So thank you for doing this training. Again, make sure that we're recording hours. It's best to do it, right after you have done whatever shift you've signed up for or committed to. But for sure, by the end of the month, I would like to have all of these done because I have to report that as well. And that brings us here to the end. Thank you all for watching this entire thing. If you have any questions, if I didn't cover anything thoroughly enough, or if you just have more questions or concerns about any particular thing, please do not hesitate to contact me. That is my cell phone number. You can call or text, or you can shoot me an email, and we can talk through any questions that you have. So thank you for your time. Thank you for wanting to stay involved. I appreciate all that you guys are going to do to help us out. So thank you.